welcome back to my channel. My name is Lana. It is very gloomy and cold and cloudy, and it's just very, I don't want to say September because I feel like September, maybe it's a little too early for this kind of weather. It feels like October today. Today I will be telling you about all the books that I'm in the middle of. So the book that I'm most actively reading right now is The Historian by Elizabeth Kostova. Me and Sarah decided to read it together. It is a chunky book. Out of all the books that I will tell you about today, this is the one I'm most actively reading. But that doesn't mean much because I don't currently have a lot of time to read. I'm currently on page 62 and I am loving this book. It's so good. It's like perfect for autumn. All I knew is that this has something to do with Dracula, or like the real story of Dracula, and I could never remember if this book is, you know, supernatural or not, and reading it now I still don't know, and I'm very interested to know where this will go. It all starts with a woman telling us the story that her father told her when she was young. So we kind of go back in time and travel with her and her father, who was a diplomat all over Europe, and he gives her snippets of this story of when he was studying to be, I'm pretty sure, a historian. He came across a mysterious ancient book and he brought it to his professor, and the professor was like, oh, wait a second, I found one as well many years ago, and it is very ancient and it was bizarre, and here's my story of trying to find out where that book is from. So you kind of go from story to story, and it is so interesting. I thought it would be a little dense, but it's not. It reads very easily, very atmospheric, and I'm just having such a good time. I already started annotating, as you can see. Next book that I picked up that I already had and I've had for a while is Games People Play. This is a non-fiction about behavioral theory and how people communicate, and games are not necessarily what we think of as games, fun games, but it's like an official terminology for different types of social interactions between people. I'm probably not saying this correctly. I'm always curious to know more about how we communicate and why, and what are the patterns that we all fall into. I've had this book on my TBR for a while, but it was just one that I could never get to. I wasn't sure how long and dense it would be, and I recently saw it in a bookstore and I saw how tiny this book is. It's very short, and I was like, well, if it's that short, I'll probably be able to read it super fast, right? And so I finally started reading it. It is very academic. It is very dense. I'm currently in the very beginning, in like the theoretical part, when he explains the terminology and like the basic theory behind the games. That took so much brain power to read. Into talking about people and how they interact with each other, and all the, as I said, like patterns of how we communicate in different situations. And it's all very interesting, but because the language is just so academic and dry, it feels like I'm reading like a textbook on, I don't know, engineering or mathematics. Like, it doesn't have that human element that I'm missing. This is not a critique at all. This is very much an academic book, and I'm sure it is for people who actually study this and need this in their research or whatever. I'm just saying that for a casual reader like me, it requires a lot of brain power, and I don't always have enough of it to offer, or when I do finally pick it up, it's just very slow because you have to like really pay attention to every sentence and not get lost. Next book is Everything is Negotiable by Gavin Kennedy. I actually have the Russian translation that my friend gave to me. She recommended this book to me after I told her about the negotiation books that I read earlier this summer. What we decided to do is swap books. So I gave her this book that I read and loved, and she gave me her copy of this one, and we decided to, after finishing them, talk about how different or similar these two books on negotiations are. I'm not as active with this book as I would like to be, just because, as I mentioned, I don't have a lot of time to read right now, and it's not a book that I'm comfortable taking on my commutes with me, because my friend who owns this book is very particular about keeping books in pristine condition. So I don't trust myself to put it in a bag with all the like pens and pencils and my water bottle. Since this is not my book, I don't know if you can see, I wrapped this book in plastic because I don't trust myself. I'm on chapter, I think, 3, and so far it's not too different from the other negotiation books that I've read. It's like it's the same ideas, just said a little differently, but I'm very curious to see what else this author offers in way of advice. Next is a fictional book that I started a very long time ago and I just cannot finish. The Turkish Gambit by Boris Akunin, a Russian author famous for this series. It's like a historical fiction, I'm gonna say mystery series. I've never read any other Boris Akunin, and I've always been curious because he's so popular, and this is the like second book in the series, but I picked up this one because I watched the movie based on this book a long time ago. I remember loving it and seeing it several times, and I thought this is a good place to start. This book takes place at the end of the 19th century during the war between the Russian Empire and the Ottoman Empire, and we follow a young woman who's I don't want to say lover, her fiance, her boyfriend is taken to war, and she, I don't even remember why, but she for some reason wants to get to him. That was like the very beginning of the book, of why she left St. Petersburg and decided to go like into like the heated area of this war to find that guy. It's not that important, but while she's looking for him, she gets stuck in this I don't even know how these things are called, like command center place where they like live and make decisions. She ends up overhearing like a confidential intelligence. They're like, well, we cannot let you go now, so you have to stay here. She sort of gets to be a witness of how all of the decisions are made and how this war progresses. It's so boring to me, like the minutia of people talking about strategy, and I don't really care. It almost seems like the protagonist doesn't really care, but she ends up being in the center of a lot of like big military decisions and some undercover work and whatnot. It's really hard for me to get through. It's a very tiny book. I literally have less than 100 pages to go. I mean, listen, I also know nothing about the military, and when you give me like 100 male protagonists who are all like different ranks, those ranks mean nothing to me. I don't understand. At this point, I'm planning to skim and read diagonally just to get to the end, and I want to rewatch the movie because now I'm very curious if I will love it this time around and whether the movie will make a lot of this more digestible for my brain. Next, I have 2 books that I shouldn't be ashamed for not finishing them. And these 2 books are by the same author. The first one is Your Body, Your Voice, and this is all about the anatomy of the voice, the throat, the larynx, how like anatomically our voice is produced. And this is a great book. I'm enjoying it a lot. I'm actually like halfway through. The problem is, like, why am I not picking it up? Even though it's not a dense book, it is not like intensely academic, it doesn't require a lot of brain power, because all of the things that are in this book are very important to me. I cannot like casually read it. I have to like sit down with a pen and post-it notes or like with a notebook and make actual notes. So this is more like a textbook to me than casual reading material. So I have to like actually schedule time to read this book because I need my full attention to be on it. And I mean, like, I'm very involved in this book. Have I been scheduling time to finish this book? No, and that is my problem. When I pick it up, it moves pretty fast. I just need to actually open it. And the second book of this author is Neurodynamics, the Art of Mindfulness in Action. I never mentioned his name. He is Theodore Diamond, and I'm a big fan of his. And if we're talking about priority, the voice book is definitely much higher on the list because this is directly connected to my day-to-day work. This one is less so. A lot of the things that I've already got a chance to read in this book, and he talks about the Alexander technique as well. Those things are also a big part of what I teach. Bodywork is very much connected to our voices. First part of this book, the theoretical parts that I'm still in the middle of, is about how our bodies are supposed to work. It talks about bones and muscles and all those systems and how they're connected to the rest of our bodies. Like, it's a lot of theory on muscles and bones. And as someone like me who's never studied medicine, a lot of this is like very new information. It's very interesting to me. I love learning about anatomy and anatomy in motion. But because this is all like very new to me, this book, easy to read, but I need to sit down and take notes. For this one, it's more like I need to reread this paragraph several times to make sure I understand. And like, this is what the pages look like. And after the theoretical parts, there is a practical one with exercises, and I cannot wait to get to that part. The parts that I stopped at was actually looking at how muscles contract. A lot of fun stuff. I feel like I've talked for hours at this point, but these are all the books that I'm currently reading. I didn't know this about myself, I just realized it, that I'm fine like putting down nonfiction books and picking them up later. Maybe it has to do with plot, that I'm scared of forgetting what came before that, so I will not be able to follow the story anymore. But then you can argue that with some nonfiction that would also not work, to have like a big break. I don't know. I do not have the answers on this channel. I have a lot of questions though. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next one.